So welcome to another wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander, and today I'm here, sadly, on my own. We're taking a look at a new-to-us game called Attack on Cahokia game. And this is from the Historical Game Company. Now, if you watched our review and our also kind of full playthrough of the Fort Jefferson attack game from the same company, this is one of the other games in that series. And let me see, it did not say. So this was set in 1780, but I was trying to see what the name of the designer was before I was to go any further. Designed by Stephen L. Kling, Jr. And so, I don't know if you can tell from the box, from the components. This game is also printed through Blue Panther, through their kind of print-on-demand system. So the game comes with like a little small 11 by 17 canvas map, a little small sheet of counters, and this is a introductory style light war game. There's a little kind of a disclaimer on the back. It's not meant to be some massive, deep, rich thing. It's not meant to be that. Not meant to say anything. This is just a little simulation of a battle that you probably have not played a game on, and it's to shed a little bit of light and maybe encourage a little bit of learning or historical research into this. So it does exactly what it says in the tin. I'm going to say that up front. The same with Fort Jefferson. This game is eminently playable. A friend of ours, Ed Bryant, who works with. No, I'm not going to say. But so he came down. He lives locally. If you've ever seen us talk about the Aegis counter trays, those are a new product that you can get. He's the guy that designs and makes those. He's a good friend of ours. Played a couple games with him over the. We met him at Buckeye Game Fest last year, or this year, the last Buckeye Game Fest in 2022. I think he played a coin game with Grant. He moved to our local area, so he came over at lunchtime and we played this on our lunch break, and teaching him the 2-3 pages of rules. This is the rules, and then playing it start to finish took us 90 minutes. So that was pretty nice. It would be quicker next time because we wouldn't have the rules teach, and once you kind of figure it out, the pace of the game's pretty quick, and it's a game that the first couple of turns are slow because there's a lot of units to move as the guys kind of melt away off the board. The pace of it quickens, and it's kind of on a knife edge for a while, and then someone will kind of win it. It was a really neat game, but it is a light introductory war game. Does not take very long to play, all things considered. And if things go catastrophically wrong, it could be very short. But this was, I felt, a more tight game than the Fort Jefferson one, in that I felt like it was more evenly balanced for a longer period of time, which I enjoyed this for that. That was really neat. The forces, whilst there's a numerical advantage for the British, were the defensive terrain and the forces that the Americans do have. I felt like it was a more even battle, and I think that was a credit to the design as well. So, if you've not seen this game, it is a very simple system. You have a little deck of cards, and you flip over a card, and the card says how many units you can move and how many units you can shoot with. After you do your moves, there might be a defensive fire phase, depending if you've got units capable of doing that. And then you do your attacks, and then it flips over to your opponent's turn. They have a little deck of cards, and they're going to do the same thing. Each of the cards tells you how many units you can activate and how many you can attack with. Sometimes it's like, move 8 guys, attack with 6 guys. Sometimes it's like, move 10 guys and attack with 8 guys. Sometimes it's move 3 and attack with none. And that doesn't feel good. And then each of the cards also has like a little special kind of action on it. Sometimes it's a modifier to combat for certain units. Sometimes you get to revive and eliminate a unit, or sometimes one of your units sallies forth out of its defensive position without you having commanded it to do so, and it will do it, and you don't have a choice about it. That's always fun. A little bit of chaos there. So, you know, the game is one that it's simple, it's light, it plays very quickly. You move some guys. Attacking is chuck a dice, add your combat factor to it. Did you overcome or meet their defensive value? Yes or no. There's no odds ratios or anything complicated. Barely any modifiers. You know, it's like a +1 for being in some kind of terrain is the most common one. And then sometimes you get like a +1 from your card for the light blue units, right? What I'll do is I'll show you how it works, and then I'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. Great. So here's a look at the map. If you watch the Fort Jefferson attack game review, this will look quite familiar to you. So we've got our 24-turn turn track over here. And then we got these two boxes for holding eliminated units in. This is the very end of the game, and this was an American victory because they killed 15 British units. The British needed to kill 12 American units, and they were 2 off that. So it was a very, very, very tight game. The only other way to win is for the British, they need to have 1 person in the orchard and 2 in this mission area, this little fort over here. So 2 units in this section, 1 in here, they're going to win automatically doing that. So the game functions by the British player always is first on the turn. They flip over a card, and they kind of just do what it says. So they're going to move 6 units, then there'll be a defensive fire phase, then they're going to attack with 5 units, and at least 3 Native American units must move into woods hexes if possible. And if not possible, they have to retreat 3 hexes away from Cahokia. So that's actually fairly punishing, all things considered, because I don't think we can do that. That's actually kind of a really bad negative special effect. Most of the special effects are like, oh, extra movement or extra attack, that kind of a thing. So that's quite funny. So 6 movements. Let's take a quick look at some units here. So the units have 3 factors on them. Here we have a, let me get the pronunciation of this right. It's a Potawatomi unit. This is an Illinois regular, and this dark blue one here is just some civilians. So they have 3 factors on them. From left to right, it's attack factor, which is added to a d6 in combat. The middle value is a defensive value that has to be overcome by that attack roll. And then the right-hand value is their movement factor, how many movement points they've got to spend. Almost everything is 1 in this game. Roads are half. The attack values sometimes have a superscript on them. This has 2, this has 2, this does not have 1. And those indicate the range that attack can have if they don't move. You can't move and shoot your rifles. You can move in close combat, but that's kind of that's just one of those things. So let's just put these guys back wherever they were, who cares? So the British players got 6 units to move. So they're going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe we should go 5, 6. Done. Now, it's not listed on the card, but there is a defensive fire phase. So the Americans can defensively fire with 3 units plus any artillery. Well, the artillery died in our game very early on. That was my mistake. And so we're just going to defensively fire with 3 units. Now, to do fire, you roll a d6 and you add your combat value, and you have to equal or exceed the enemy's defensive factor, including terrain effects modifiers. So let's do that. And you can't combine attacks in defensive fire. You can if you're on the offensive, but you can't in defensive fire. So let's say this guy is going to shoot him. So I'm going to be a d6 plus 2, and I'm going against his 5. So d6 plus 2, I rolled a 3, so nothing. This guy's going to go against him. I rolled a 4, also nothing. And let's go 2 on a 5 here. Hey! So I've got 6, 7, 8. Because I exceed his defensive factor of 5 by 2 or more, he's immediately eliminated. If I had only equaled or exceeded it by 1, he would then become disrupted and would have to retreat 2 spaces. The disruptions are more common than the eliminations, is what I would say. So he died. That was an extremely good roll, which makes up for our terrible rolls over here. In defensive fire, there's no advance after combat or anything like that. But it is possible, if you roll disruptions, you know, a bunch of these guys get disrupted and have to retreat back, you can really mess up people's offensives and attacks. So now they're going to attack with 5 of their units. You can't attack with everyone, but 5 of their units. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll attack this guy on here. So he's going to roll a d6 plus 2, and this defensive value is a 3, but he's in the woods, so he's in an orchard. Orchard and woods are the same, so he's a 4. So d6 plus 2, I rolled a 6. 6 is 2 greater than 4, so he's dead. If he isn't in a zone of control, and this is vacated by killing someone, he could advance in there if he wanted to. There's no reason to, but he could. So that was one of our 5 attacks. So here we've got 2 attacks, and we'll attack this guy. So we're going to combine fire. So we're going to be 2 each supporting unit, and you can support with 2 more units. Just adds only +1. So we've got 2, 3. So it's going to be a d6 plus 3 going against a 5. Across this thick wall is 2. So a d6 plus 3 going up against a 7. Well, a d6 plus 3, I rolled 4. That's not even enough to get his regular defensive value. So that's 1, 2, 3 of our 5 attacks done. So now I've got 2 left. Maybe I'll be a bit more judicious. All these guys are in buildings, so let's just go up against one of them. So I've got 1, 2, so I've got 2 and 3, so I've got a d6 plus 3 going up against this 7. So a d6 plus 3, I've got 8, and that goes up against this 7. And so what's going to happen here is, because it's equal to or greater than by only 1, I become disrupted rather than eliminated, and I have to retreat 2 spaces. The problem here is where I'm retreating to. So we're going to retreat all the way over here. And if you notice on their disordered side, they only have a defensive value. They can't fire, they can't move. You have to rally those guys. Because this guy, once again, not in a zone of control anymore, he could go into this space, and we would do that. Even though we attack with both of them, this guy cannot go in here because he's in a zone of control. So we'll just send this guy in here. And also disrupted units they no longer project a zone of control. So he's not doing a whole lot there, but he's occupying a space at least. So that was all 5 of our attacks. Then we would rally anyone. So if we had a guy over here who had retreated and was disrupted, you rally everyone who was not in an enemy zone of control. And then simply you flip over to the American turn. They're going to do the same thing to you. They've got 5 moves. Well, we're not doing a whole lot of moves in this. Maybe we'll step these guys up here so we can get better attack going on here. And then it's, do you risk sending a guy out or through and vacating a space? You get into the fun stuff. And we're going to only attack with 4 guys. There's no defensive fire from anyone on the board because the British units, the only dude who can conduct defensive fire is this trapper unit, and he was killed earlier in the game. You think about defensive fire as like good discipline and training, and that's just not available to these Native American units in this little simulation. So, but yeah, this is very much a back and forth. So there's no defensive fire because there's no one capable, but if there was, you would do defensive fire, and then we're just going to attack them back with my 4 units. So we're just going to roll and see what happens. So I've got, well, we did this, so let's do it. I've got 4 attacks. That's not great. This is ugly as well. Maybe we can, no. So let's say we've got 2, 3, 4 against him. Oh, gross, I rolled a 5, so nothing happens. That's very bad. Then I've got 1 attack left, because that was 3 of my 4 units. 1 attack, I'll just take a pot shot at this guy. So 2 on a 5. I rolled a 4, so nothing happens. And that's when terrible rolling happens, this game will go the 24 turns. If your rolling is kind of lethal, it can you can really make some progress. But that's how the game works. It's not a complicated game by any stretch of the imagination. It's really nice to play around with. Very simple. This is the rules book. It's like 3 pages. But that's how it functions. What we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at how the game works. I had a really enjoyable time with this. I'd weighed up playing it solitaire if that was something I'd be interested in doing. Sure, you could do that. It might be slightly too light for me to do it solo. But playing it 2-player for a little light game at lunchtime was perfect. It filled a really nice little niche in a collection. I really enjoyed that. And I will say that I think I liked this. Gosh, Fort Jefferson was so good though. I think I liked this more because I think this was a more evenly balanced game. And I know we laugh at balance after a few plays. It felt like the forces in the defensive terrain were much more evenly arrayed, just to start with. And this game, we had some good rolls and some bad rolls on either side, and it was on a knife edge for longer before it kind of decisively flipped one way or the other. And I just thought that was a much more enjoyable experience. The other one's really good. The other one's got some really cool stuff with the blockhouses and the artillery pieces stuck in them, but you get surrounded, and it's kind of it's a very tough one. That one is for the Americans, I think. This one much more. I felt like it was much more even. Now, historically, in this one, the British were beaten back, and that's what happened in this. And so, is it skewed that way? I don't know. We haven't played it that much, but I felt like this game was more evenly matched for a longer period, and I think that's a good thing. Like, I was sitting on 8 to 10 losses, he was sitting on 10 to 12 losses, and he needed a 12 and I needed a 15, and so we were very close with losses for a longer period of time. It wasn't like, I just lost a ton of guys, and it was like I'm close to collapse immediately. Which I felt like that kind of happened in the other game. So I think as a game, this one might be just that little extra bit better, but that was also very interesting. And once again, this is also a topic and a title that I've never heard of. I didn't know anything about. So, here I am on Google looking up, what happened. There is a small little background, the very small design and background paragraph tells you a little bit about the design ethos, that there's nothing, one way or the other in what the design is trying to say, but just that this battle that happened, and the context of it was there was a 2-pronged attack. There was this one here, but there was also a raiding party that went to St. Louis as well. And the Americans had some early warning, and so there were some regulars that were sent there, and the British and Native American forces were extremely surprised that there was such a well-organized defense there, that they'd been had, so to speak, and they were defeated and kind of forced to retreat with losses and things like that. So, little interesting bit of history, something I've never played before, and I really enjoy the asymmetry of the sides in this conflict, and I enjoy it from an intellectual and historical standpoint. You see some of it in the game. The Native American forces typically have much better movement factors, but they can't do defensive fire because they're maybe not as well disciplined and trained to do that kind of a thing. But there's more of them, and so they can move around and get surrounds on and things like that. So there's a little bit of asymmetry in this, and there isn't any game where the forces are arrayed, but the actual capabilities of the forces are ever so slightly different, and it makes a difference. But this is a game where you can picture everything that's happening, and there's little stories that come out. There's the one heroic unit in the corner that keeps beating back attacks. The enemy keeps rolling ones on him, and you're like, yes, and he's holding out, and that might be a fun little moment, but strategically, that guy's pinning down forces that would be used elsewhere, and you'd be collapsing far quicker had they not done that. And so there's little bits and pieces and moments like that. So if you've never played any war games, this could very easily be your very first war game. If you've played a ton of war games, but you're looking for something, you've not played before, that you can, play in a lunch break, this is absolutely the kind of thing that you could look into. There's a bunch of games in this series. I think there's 13 titles, I think, that are to do with like the American Revolution or like French Indian War style stuff. This being one of them, or later kind of. I don't know what you'd call it. Grant would crucify me for not knowing this, but like this was 1780, so it's like post the Revolutionary War, and it's them, going out east and stuff or out west and stuff as well. Oh, I guess this is during. So I don't know what I'm talking about. But I think there's other ones that aren't to Amrith. I could be wrong about that. But then there's a couple other in the series which are like European things, like the Siege of Khartoum and a couple of the bits and pieces. So there's other things to check out, but this is, sheds light on a topic that I could almost guarantee that you've never played a game on before. And, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a quick, light war game, and it's worth kind of taking a punt on if that's something that you're interested in. So, if you've got the gumption and you're interested in something like this, I'd say give it a go. Just understand that what you're getting yourself into. But this is a small, light war game. Not everything has to be, this huge 50-page rulebook. Sometimes it's okay to just set up a game and play it and enjoy it for what it is. So I had a really good time with this. I want to thank Ed for coming down to my house and playing this with me on a lunch break. It was really cool, nice experience, and it was fun to play another one of these to kind of solidify that my opinion of this series was correct. Like, I played a couple of these now. They do exactly what they say on the tin, and it's learn a little new piece of history. So, Attack on Cahokia game from the Historical Game Company. You can buy this through Blue Panther. Check it out on their website if this is something you're interested in. But appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.